Hey everybody, how's it going? Hope you all are having a fantastic day. So, if you can't really guess by the title, I'm actually going to do a football vlog for you. I rarely do these because I hate to say it, I really don't follow stats. I'm not that great at keeping up with like individual players, stats, fantasy leagues, that kind of thing. I like watching football for the sport for the most part. I've pretty much been a lifelong Denver Broncos fans. You can hate all you want. It's been my team since I was so. Anyway, but I kind of felt compelled to at least say something about the events that unfolded for my Denver Broncos from about Thursday of last week through yesterday's game. Anyway, let's get to it. And I'm going mostly off of I've read like 3, 4 different articles. I read an article by a guy named Lance. I forget his last name. Apologies in advance. He wrote about it for Sports Illustrated, I believe, and also read articles from the Denver Post. And a lot of the information I picked up, honestly, just listening to the radio going into work yesterday early afternoon before the game. I was listening to basically the KOA radio and their little pregame shows and stuff like that. So, for those of you that don't know, we are at the end of November 2020. Today is Monday. So Thursday last week, apparently, sometime during last week, and this is just my understanding, sometime last week, the quarterbacks, like all four of Denver's quarterbacks, were in the quarterback room in the meeting, and supposedly this meeting was somehow taped. I'm not sure if it's normally taped or if it was COVID protocols or something like that. Supposedly this meeting was taped, and at one point, I mean, I haven't heard about for like what the quarterbacks were doing, how long this was going on, kind of thing. At one point, they had masks on, but they were down at one point. And apparently, the quarterback room is set up to where they can be socially distant, but I guess they were still supposed to wear masks, and they were down at some point during the meeting. For how long, I don't know. But either way, all of the quarterbacks at one point in time had their masks down, doing what, again, I don't know. So, Thursday, they didn't know, it wasn't really released at first. It kind of came out as a rumor, but the team later confirmed it on Thursday that quarterback Jeff Driscoll had tested positive for the COVID-19. Okay, so unfortunately, because through contract tracing and I guess investigation, they realized through that meeting that all the remaining quarterbacks were all considered a high contract risk or a high contact risk because they were in the same room as Jeff with their masks down. So I guess they realized this. They put Jeff on the COVID reserve list Thursday, and I guess they were doing an initial investigation. Realized what happened Friday, and my understanding is they sent the findings off to the league. For whatever reason, the league it took them over 10 hours, I believe it was. I can't remember if it was like 10 or 30 hours. It took them, I think it was 10. Pretty sure it was 10, okay? 10 hours later, the league comes back, and this is Saturday morning. The league comes back Saturday morning, says, hey, and they tell the Broncos, hey, you pretty much have to park all of your quarterbacks. They're all ineligible because we feel they are a high contact risk, so they all need a quarantine for 5 days. Side note, I don't know where the NFL came up with this whole 5-day quarantine because my knowledge is if you're suspected or if you pop positive, you have to quarantine for 2 weeks. So I don't know if the 5 days is just because you're suspected and you have to have tests in between those 5 days. I don't know. So Saturday morning, these guys are getting ready to have what I think is their final practice before Sunday's game, and the Broncos are pretty much told, hey, you need to park all 4 of your quarterbacks. They can't play. So all of a sudden, barely 24 hours before we're supposed to play into the New Orleans Saints at home, we have no quarterbacks available. It's my understanding that the Broncos were back and forth with the league all day, trying to come up with a plan. I guess they were asking. I don't know what came first. I believe they were asking for the game to be postponed because the NFL had postponed the Steelers versus Ravens game because the Ravens are having COVID issues, so they postponed that game until Tuesday. It's my understanding that Denver was asking for the same thing, but Roger Goodell himself stepped in and said, no, we're not postponing. You guys need to play on Sunday or forfeit. Okay? I'm going to get back to that. But that was my understanding. So, Saturday, Denver's trying to figure out what to do to get a quarterback for Sunday. And I guess they wanted to put their offensive strength and conditioning coach, like one of the offensive line coaches, they wanted to put him in as a quarterback because, I guess next to the quarterbacks, he had the best command of the offense. The NFL comes back and says, no, we're not going to let you use the coaching roster as a storage place for players or something to that effect. So that goes on. So what Denver winds up doing is, and this is news now, but so my understanding is Saturday night, Denver winds up basically signing a wide receiver off the practice squad, Kendall Hinton. They signed him to basically play quarterback for Sunday. And he's had some quarterback experience. It's my understanding he did he played quarterback in high school, played quarterback for about a year in college, and then he rotated to wide receiver, which is what he went into the NFL at. So, it's my understanding he's literally informed Saturday night. I think he maybe had 3-4 hours total with the offensive line. I'm not sure if they really actually got any reps in, but it was just my understanding that was his total prep time, was about 3 to 4 hours. Which, and I'll start this video off by saying, I'll start my reaction just by saying my hat's off to Kendall Hinton. I mean, when you go from, you're sitting there on the practice squad, you're just doing what you can to support the team and get by, and all of a sudden, with less than 24 hours notice, you get the phone call that says, hey, not only are we signing you and activating you to a game, you have to go in as a quarterback. I don't know anybody that would have that kind of confidence to do it. I mean, if you think about it, you're being thrown into something that, I hate to say it, it's almost like you know when you're going to lose because there's no prep time. The coaches don't even have time to throw in a good game plan. Okay? So, my hat's off to him. Unfortunately, I didn't watch the game yesterday just because I was working. It's just the way my schedule is. I was working, so I kind of, check my phone now and again just to get a score update. And when I heard about all this, on the way to work, I'm like, this is not going to be a good game. And unfortunately, it wasn't. I mean, you guys know the final score. It was like 31-3 or something like that. I mean, we got a field goal in. Thank you, Brandon McManus. And I believe it was a 58-yarder. So, anyway. But seriously, my hat's off to him. And I know from my understanding is our defense really came out to play that day. They weren't going to exactly give New Orleans an easy bye. They were like, no, you're going to earn those 31 points. It's just, unfortunately, our offense we couldn't do anything. We didn't have a quarterback. So, that being said, I'm kind of pissed at the whole, the leadership on both. There's two leaderships I'm pissed at, basically. And I'm about to explain why. I'm going to start. To me, there's a lot of fault with the Broncos organization. There's a lot more fault with the NFL. Both have problems, and the NFL really screwed the Broncos. I'll give it that, but the Broncos did not help. I'll just start off with the quarterbacks. I guess Locke, when this all broke out, he kind of handed out, he tweeted kind of a halfway apology, calling it an honest mistake, but he owns it. I'm like, okay, we're late into 2020. These masks have been part of our lives since March, around March anyway. I mean, I'm pretty sure that, in the league, you guys are told what the rules are. You get paid a bunch of money, but you still have to live by these rules. And I'm kind of frustrated because no one really stepped up and admitted what happened until it was caught on videotape, is my understanding. And I'm like, well, that just shows lack of integrity. I mean, I know it's a young core of quarterbacks, but at the same time, roll adults here. If you see something that you think's going to mess up the team, at least admit it early, get that done and out of the way, rather than waiting until the final hour, and then all of a sudden the shit starts rolling downhill. So, I mean, the quarterbacks, all of them really need to own up to that. I mean, I will say that, I hope Jeff Driscoll recovers and gets healthy again and that sort of thing. But, it just, come on. You guys are in the room together. You should have enough common sense to wear a mask. I wear a mask when I'm at work. I wear a mask if I go into Walmart. We all need to do it. Okay? So, I mean, there's that problem. It's just, the quarterback started this, and a lot of people are getting pissed at the NFL, and don't worry, I'm going to get to that too. But really, the problem started there. Had they just been following protocol, and I know I'm probably going to sound like a Karen, but if there was a mask violation, I would hope that at least there was enough of a violation to make it a violation, not just they're crying because they pulled their mask down to take a sip of water. I don't know how long their masks were down, but the quarterbacks evidently all screwed up. And what irritates me is that nobody really stepped up and owned it prior to the story breaking and the NFL having to intervene. That's the one thing that frustrates me. And the other thing that frustrates me is apparently we're about to be labeled repeat offenders, because if you don't know, head coach Vic Fangio, he was fined $100,000 for repeatedly pulling his mask down on the sidelines during one of our early games. I forget if it was. I think it was a week 2 game, and I actually forget who we were playing. Sorry, but I know it was a week 2 game. I think week 2, week 3, somewhere around there. So we're looking at potentially I'm pretty sure we're going to be labeled repeat offenders, which means the penalties are a lot worse. So there's that. So that's my first point of attack, is the Broncos leadership. I'm still a fan, but I really hate how this organization has just, I feel like they've gone downhill. They've really gone downhill in the last 3 or 4 years. The Peyton Manning era was great. 2015 was great. We had pretty much the number 1 defense in the entire league. So I'm thankful to Mr. Elway for that, because he did get us Manning. He got us, the defense. He helped get us the defense for 2015 for a Super Bowl 50 run. And I believe he got us Von Miller, because if I remember right, we drafted Von Miller the first year that we had Elway. Feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, but if memory serves, I think he was one of Elway's first picks for the draft. So, I mean, he got us those, but the track record since then, it just hasn't been great. I mean, and you don't really have to look very far. Look at the quarterback carousel that we've had since 2015, okay? Look at how many freaking head coaches we've had since Elway took over. When Elway took over, we had just gotten rid of Josh McDaniels, which, God, that was a huge mistake to have him. I'm sorry to say. It's just, I'm sure that by now he's a good guy. It's just, he just obviously wasn't ready to be a head coach when he was our head coach in Denver. So when Elway came in, we had John Fox. Fox was with us for a good, let's say it was 4 years, because we had him in 2011. I forgot when we picked him up. It was 2010, 2011, but I know it was a mutual parting of ways prior to the 2015 run. So, 4 or 5 years, somewhere in there. And then we had Coach Kubiak. I loved what he did. He was different from John Fox. I think he was a little bit more, he wanted a different approach for the offense, and I knew Peyton Manning wasn't used to Kubiak's approach. I'm happy that Kubiak relented a little bit early in the 2015 season and kind of let Manning do what he wanted to do with the offense. The offense, 2015 wasn't Manning's greatest statistical year. In fact, if I remember right, it was probably one of his worst statistical years. But I mean, he was still getting the job done, so to speak. I mean, he still kept the games winnable for us at the very least, and our defense was a huge help with that. And I'm grateful for that. I'll always be grateful for Manning's 4 years here. And I'll be great. I'm always going to be grateful for Elway's years as a quarterback. His years as a general manager, on the other hand, I mean, I'm grateful that he got us Manning. I'm grateful that he got us Von Miller. I'm grateful for, again, the 2015 defense. After that was when we really had the problems. Um, so it's like Manning retired, and 2016 we were already losing a couple of our starting defense members. I can't remember if DeMarcus Ware retired that year or the year after Manning left. I really can't remember. um, but I know we were already losing some of our defense for the 2016 campaign, and that was Kubiak's final year. It was a respectable year. We didn't make the playoffs, but we still went 9-7, which means, hey, we were still competitive. We were greater than half and half. So it was a respectable year. I kind of figured we weren't going to be able to return just because we lost Manning. We were already starting to see the quarterback carousel, and some of the defense members had left. So I kind of figured we were already looking at a rebuild. So I was thinking before the season even started, I was thinking I'd be surprised if we made it back. And we didn't, sadly. But after that, it's just when it just sucked. It just sucked. We hired Vance Joseph, and that's just, that was a mess. I'm glad that experiment's over. Vic Fangio seems okay. I'm not a big fan of a lot of his decisions, but I'm not a coach. It's just, so I could be wrong in a lot of aspects. It's just, I'm not a big fan of the way he runs games. He's a little bit too inconsistent, and obviously we're not getting the job done. We still haven't returned to the playoffs. We're not winning games. It's just kind of more of an embarrassment to watch. I mean, we were in a constant quarterback carousel until the end of last year when they finally let Drew Lock play. And he looked promising toward the end of last year. I figured this year would probably be a learning curve for him because it'd be his first full year as a starter. A lot of our great quarterbacks, their first couple of years weren't great. Peyton Manning, if I remember right, his team went 3-13 his rookie year. But, look at how he's been since then. And I know Elway's first few years with the Broncos weren't great either. So, I mean, I'm trying not to be too hard on Locke, and I'm trying to remember that a lot of especially on our offensive side, overall, we have a really young team. Everybody out there is still learning. I get that. It's just, I don't think the coaching at the same time is really doing them any favors. It's just, there's been too many times I'm just watching or listening to games and I'm like, what the? So, but the sad part is, it's just, and even beyond the coaching, you look at how the teams run, all right? And just the ownership question. I mean, we still don't really know what our team's doing for an ownership. Right now, it's still the Pat Bowlen Trust with Joe Ellis, and that's coming under fire too with these new NFL rules that say that you have to have one person with greater than a 30% stake in the franchise. So we may be forced to sell if the Bowlen family can't figure, if the Bowlen family and the family trust can't figure this stuff out. But to me, and this is long-winded, I know, but to me, it's just, I'm trying to get to the point where there's just no leadership. And I hate to say it, if Mr. Bowlen was still alive, God rest his soul, I think he'd be ashamed at what's become of the team. I mean, we've been posting losing seasons. We haven't seen the playoffs since our 2015 run at all. I hate to say it, we're turning into a hot dumpster fire. I really hope, at least with the core players that we have, that we got something going. But it's just, the ownership needs to do more. Or we need to find somebody that's got the drive to light the fires and just do something. I mean, when you got a team that we're not in the play, we haven't been to the playoffs. I'm praying we can make the playoffs this year, but I seriously doubt it. I mean, the odds are just crazy stacked against us now. but we're repeat COVID offenders, and we just got a blemish. I mean, we're the Broncos. They're the Broncos, for crying out loud. And it's just, we got all these marks against us. It sucks. It's just, I really think, it's just my opinion. If Mr. Bolin, and feel free to correct me if I'm wrong or right, if Mr. Bolin was still in control, had the reins, heads would be rolling. Because I really don't think he'd allow things to keep going the way they've been going. I mean, I know 2020 is a really strange year for everybody, but come on, man. I mean, we've been on fire for the last 4 years, at least. So that's my frustration. It's just there seems to be a lack of leadership and a lack of direction and a lack of identity with the Broncos because of the whole ownership situation. I'm like, figure it out and give us somebody that's going to get us pointed in the right direction that Mr. Bolin would have agreed with. Come on. It's not that freaking hard to do, in my opinion. I mean, we've done it for so long, and it's just all of a sudden we're falling off a cliff because Mr. Bolin's not there anymore. It sucks. It really does. Now, so, in a nutshell, the Broncos' lack of leadership has caused a lot of problems, in my opinion, and it's also led up to, lack of discipline and integrity, obviously. So that kind of started this whole shenanigan. But the NFL really, really freaking messed up on this one. And I am calling out Roger Goodell on this one. He probably won't hear me because I'm a low view channel, whatever. But when you take multiple teams, okay, even our team, when we were getting ready to go up against New England, and they had their freaking COVID pandemic, what did they do? It was a constant hurry up and wait, okay? First, the game gets delayed. I think at first it was moved to like Sunday night for whatever reason, because it was supposed to be a Sunday daytime. Then it got moved to Monday. Then there was rumors it was going to go to Tuesday. And even though we had practiced all week to get ready for the game against New England, they finally come up and say, we're rescheduling. This was basically your guys' bye week. We're moving New England's game over here, and we're rotating the rest of your opponents around. So we basically got burned out of a bye week over New England's BS, okay? Because they wanted to make sure that Cam Newton could play, would be my guess. Fortunately, we showed up and we beat the crap out of them. I'm kind of glad we did. Put them in their place, whatever. So, we got dicked around. We got burned out of a bye week for that mess. And I've seen multiple games postponed, moved around, rescheduled for COVID. This week alone, we got the Steelers versus Ravens got moved to Tuesday. And I know that the Broncos were saying, why can't you do that for us if we have this suspected COVID problem? Because had they delayed until Tuesday, most of the quarterbacks would have been available again because they would have been coming off of quarantine. Granted, they might have been a little rusty because they've been quarantining for 5 days, but we would have had some quarterbacks. But my understanding is the league's like, no, you either play with the restrictions on the quarterbacks, or you forfeit. So we were forced into a game that we just basically, it went from a game that we were pretty hopeful to win. I felt like we had a decent shot at winning it to, it was a no-win situation. You might as well forfeit. But what team is really going to do that? They're going to at least come out there and try and put on a performance. So my hat's off to the guys. The team members that did go out there and play. Because it was just a messed up situation all around. But what I'm getting at is the inconsistencies that the NFL has had all year long. If they don't like a team, it seems like if they don't like the team, or if a team's not going to, if they're not doing very well, they are going to get run into the ground. Okay? We got forked out of our bye week, and then we pretty much got forced into a no-win situation. But yet, with all the other teams, oh, you're okay, we'll postpone you. We're going to get a postponement, we're going to get a reschedule opportunity. We can't reschedule because we don't have a freaking bye week anymore. The NFL freaking took it from us. So it's just, you got guys that are tired, wore out, because we're having to play amid all this bullshit, all this pandemic stuff, and everything else going on, all these new protocols and stuff. Something happens, which, the quarterbacks have to accept the fault for that, accept their role for that, but the NFL's like, oh well, either play or forfeit, and that's bad on the NFL. I mean, really, Goodell needs to be fired because I don't know how many times he's messed up in his role. The NFL is messed up, and all we get is this press conference. We will make it right. You haven't made shit right in years, Goodell. Okay, you haven't. It, I love my Broncos, but the league is such a crapshoot, in my opinion. From the piss poor officiating, missed calls that could have altered the game. And now the way you're handling the COVID stuff, like almost every other team that I've seen come up on COVID, unless it's just like one or two players and they can just sit them, and, like as if they were injured. But if they're having a problem, the NFL's usually postpone it, reschedule it, whatever. So they did New England a favor, burned us out of our bye week, but they did New England a favor. But yet, when we wind up with the same problem on our end, oh well, play without your quarterbacks. Good job, NFL. Good job. I mean, Roger Goodell should be ashamed of himself. I'm just going to say it right now. He should be ashamed of himself. The whole COVID committee that they have up there needs to be ashamed of themselves because there is no consistency. All right, they're just playing freaking favorites up there. If you got a shot at being in the playoffs, or if you're like on the verge of top seed, you're gonna get preferential treatment. But if you're not having a great year, oh well. It's just it's stupid. But really, I'll still say Goodell should be ashamed of himself, and really the Broncos leadership needs to be ashamed of himself. I mean, Joe Ellis has sat and watched our team, our franchise, become a hot dumpster fire from 2016 onwards, and it's just ridiculous, and it's just sad. I'm like, John Elway, one of the best quarterbacks of the game, freaking Hall of Famer, but he hasn't gotten us a good quarterback since Peyton Manning. How do you explain that? Because we've had a lot of good quarterbacks coming to the league. We've had Mahomes, we've had. I know Mahomes is one of them, and I'm sure there's a few other names I'm forgetting. I think Mahomes, I'm just thinking because he's a recent draft and he's in our division and he keeps beating the pants off us. But Goodell really needs to be ashamed of himself. The league needs to be ashamed of themselves because basically they turned what should have been a decent football game into a hot mess. My hat's off to the players and especially to Tingle Hinton for taking that call and accepting the quarterback role and just going out there. I couldn't have done it. I really couldn't have. My hat's off to the players, but the leadership from the Broncos to the league, you guys should be ashamed of yourselves. And this needs to be a freaking wake-up call. When you're so dysfunctional that you're having to ask the league to activate a freaking offensive line coach to play, it's stupid, okay? It's stupid. Yeah, you can argue that the NFL put them in that position, but they didn't help by how they started it. I think it would have turned out better if the quarterbacks would have said, hey, we screwed up, this is what happened. It might have wound up with more time for the Broncos and the league to come up with a better decision, a better plan. I don't know. But either way, it's just a tale of two leaderships really dropping the ball on this one. And unfortunately, the fans and the players paid for it. They really did. And it's just, for us, it's another loss. Probably, I'm pretty sure if it's not the last nail in the coffin for going to the playoffs, it's damn near it. But shame on you guys. Use it as a wake-up call. Wake up. Let's figure this stuff out. And just play some football. And Goodell. I'm gonna say this about Goodell. For the rest of the freaking year, okay? No more postponed games. None of that. Alright? If you're gonna burn the Broncos the way you burned it, either if a team's got COVID issues, you either tell them to park their players that are impacted and they still have to play, or really you should resign. Because it's not fair if other teams can get away with postponing, but another team has to be forced to play. It's bull. It's absolute bull, okay? And people can say, well, you're the Broncos. I mean, you guys are already headed downhill. You're still costing a game. So get it right. That's all I got.